So welcome to the Artful Yogi, Painting Faces with Gail. And for some of you, it might be a little daunting to paint a face, even a sort of a scrabbly one like this one here. And it's such a good idea to just start off with painting over an existing face. So you can see in one of my art journals, I've pasted the face over and I'm just selecting some cool colours. I've got a sort of a gold there, would you believe, and a purple and some white for mixing. So I'm going to be doing white and purple, white and gold, gold and purple, and white by itself. I'm just getting an idea of what sort of a brush I should use, and you can see that this one's sort of, I can get to most parts around the face. And all I'm doing at the moment is just putting in a little bit of a background, not even trying to think about the face too much at all. I've got some green which is out of shot, so it's just a green that I wanted to get rid of, but I actually found that it was quite a really nice shadowy colour. So the shade around the face and then some highlights on the outside of that shade. So here's my white now. Now I'm not really worried about technique here. I'm not thinking too hard. If I happen to paint on the pasted face or the paper, that's fine, because I know that this is going to be quite a lot of layers. Here's my purple now. So what colour does green and purple make? And these are sort of my darker shadows. But again, I'm going to go over these anyway. So there's really no way you can make a mistake at this point. A little bit more green and a little bit more purple. I'm trying not to go over each paint stroke too much. So you can see that I'm always trying to leave at least a little bit showing. I want lots of nice chunks of colour, and I want the blending to happen automatically, just naturally. So now I'm going for my lighter shades. Used my white, and I'm just turning the brush in my fingers as I scrabble along. So finding the highlights, we're going to have a look at this now. So all I've done is have a look and see, I've dried off the painting, I can touch it, and I'm just using a white paint pen. This is easier than using a brush, but of course I could do this with a brush. And so I'm just looking on the page and seeing, where do I see the lighter bits on this lady's face? This again is a great way to orient yourself to where you would normally find these lighter bits. A little bit under the lips there, a little bit on the neck. I'm going to go crazy on the neck. And you might notice also, today I've decided not to do the shoulder or her dress, just hanging around doing the face. A little bit something there, a little bit there. Tiny little bit of white there. And then I've got that middle bit on the middle of her forehead. That's about it. And if there's anything that I'm not happy with, you just let it dry, and I've let it dry now. And then you can either go back with white, or you can start finding the shadows. So the shadows are pretty easy. It's mostly the parts that haven't been coloured in with the white. And I'm blending a little bit with my finger, but I don't have to. It's kind of nice to get that as well, that chunky look. A little bit of blending over there. And once you've got the white there, it is pretty easy to just go everywhere else that there's no white. It's as simple as that. Not staying in the lines. If I lose the shape of the nose, that's fine too. Make sure that you dry each layer, at least so that you can put your hands on and no paint will come off on your fingers. Here I am just showing you. Alright, mid-tones. So there is a little bit of an area between the light and the dark. That's all I'm doing. I'm using gold, and I'm going to find those areas between the two colours. So a little bit into the purple or the blue and a little bit onto the white. I'm not really fussed if I go over anything. I can always bring it back on another layer. So where are the edges of the two contrasts, light and dark? And I'm just wiping the excess on the brush, and then I'm going back in. So I'm just recapturing some of the darks that I lost, that I went maybe a little bit too far on. A little bit more dark there. And cleaning the brush again. Let's recapture the whites. And because the paint is still wet, I can start to get that blended look. It's still very scruffy, it's very painterly, you can see the brush strokes, and I like that, which is handy because it's nice and easy. And I'm just blending it through, wet on wet they call it. So going over the whites into the mid-tone. I'm getting a bit more of a sort of a natural painterly look to the whole thing. Looks like I've just about finished. You just never know. Okay, so it is looking a bit of a mess. We need to get some of the lines back, and I'm just using a pencil. Nothing fancy here, and in fact I've pretty well used just average art supplies. Have a look at how I'm holding the pencil. I want really loose lines. So I'm holding it perpendicular to the paper, so the point of the pencil is down and the end of the pencil is right upwards. Completely different to how you're doing writing. And I'm just travelling around leisurely, loosely, just outlining that head, and now I'm just marking in where I lost a little bit of detail. I can still sort of see the lady's details, so that's handy for me as a reference. Anything I don't like, I just let it dry and then I have another go later on. Notice how I'm just trying to get a feel for where that nose is in relation to the lips. Now I've added on another edge to the nose, and you can see I've just put in the extra nostril just to see if I'd like to keep it there or not. Just going out, tracing the lines that I can barely see, and having fun, really enjoying finding those little layers around the head and roughly around the actual hairline itself. All of this can change, and that's the thing that I like. And there she is. So I'm looking now for what I call loose ends. I need a finer brush, and I'm just going to recapture some of the bits that I have lost. So tiny brush, And I'm just going to bring my whites back into it again. So here's some early highlights just onto the top of the lip. And here we go. I'm using my white, tiny little brush, and I'm just trying to get a point on the brush. That's what I'm doing over there. I'm putting the paint on, and then I'm sort of twirling the brush until it's got a really nice fine point. And then I'm getting those smaller parts that I couldn't really get to before because the brush was simply too big. Still playing with the idea of, should I have a cheek there? Should I have that extra nostril there? Getting those fine lines, and again, I'm just going over the white bits, white on the white, and I'm trying to get some highlights. They're really big highlights at the moment because I'm going to go over them all. A little bit of highlight on the eyes, just like eyeshadow. And I'm just trying to get a nicer shape into that chin. The one thing I don't like about using models for faces is that they have very skinny faces. So quite often I'll actually have to reshape them. But I'm quite enjoying just getting the little highlights, and notice what the effect of that tiny little dot in the eyes makes. Just that little bit of shine. And she's starting to look quite natural. She's also starting to look like my painting and not so much the face that I started off with. So I've got a little bit of pink now, and I'm going to start to put on a little bit of blusher, if you like. Got a new brush, so it's a nice dry brush, and I'm just getting a little bit of paint onto the end and then sort of moving it around, and I've used a little bit of white. So she's got a little bit of a light pink. Almost like going over those mid-tones that we did in gold earlier. And gold and pink make a really, really nice flesh colour. A little bit more highlighter. A little bit more on the neck. And you'll notice that if you work on paper like this, that a lot of the colours will just sort of sink in. And so you will have to go over and over and over. Which means, of course, if you do make a mistake or you're not really happy with something, well, you can just go over in a different way. She's still looking pretty washed out to me, but I'm just going to keep going over with a little bit of pink. Now I'm putting in her lips. That's the first coat anyway. And because I had some white to go on, it'll make it a little bit more of a true pink rather than blend it out with that purple underneath or the blue. Again, I'm making a nice fine point. Just coming in, a little bit of white. And I'll probably go over that again later on. I'm just getting an idea for myself of if she had a little bit of blusher, where would it go? What would it look like? And we can always sculpt it back. There's that fine point. Messy, but it does get a really good little point, and that means that I don't have to use a smaller brush. Still playing with the idea of the extra nostril. No, looks like it's gone. So she's still very chunky, very scrabbly. I quite like that look, but you can see some bits are blended in as well. So let's see if we can smooth out a few more lines and just add a few more highlights, this time with a white pen, and it's a Signo pen and my pencil. Now this is just a normal pencil, you don't have to buy anything special. Notice that I'm using the pencil normally, in a more normal fashion, as if I was going to write something. I've got the pencil around about halfway down the length of it rather than at the end, so I've got a little bit more control, but not as much as if I was doing a very fine detailed drawing. I quite like all of those little lines because it adds movement to my painting. I'm never really quite sure what's going to happen here. There you go, reinstating that second nostril. Will it stay? Not sure. Now here's my Signo pen. So I've just shaken down the paint, and again I'm reinstating those little dots in the eyes, 1 dot for each eye, and then I'm just highlighting the edges around the eye. Because the pen is so fine, I can get in and do some really detailed bits. So I actually like dots for eyelashes. And here I am doing a few more dots, getting an idea of highlights in her lips. Cleaning up the ear a little bit, and she does need a bit more of an earlobe. Just roughly getting a little bit of eyeliner around the eyes. So let's now go back and check for more shadows. Remember, it's that contrast between high and low lights that's going to make your face interesting. So I have got a very cheap black sparkly paint, and I like it because it doesn't have a lot of pigment in it. And I've also got a silver paint marker. But basically I've just chosen a couple of darker, not colours, but hues, and see how that sort of blends in automatically. And that's because it hasn't got a colour, it's just dark. Now this particular brush is called a rigger brush. You can see it's quite long, and I like it because I can just drag, and the brush is quite wobbly, so everything's just going to wobble around. I've got quite a lot of movement going on there. Easiest way to do hair. Just getting in a couple of those lowlights, those shadows. And you can see why I like this paint. It hasn't got a lot of pigment. It's not going to take over anything. If I compare it to the darkness of her dress, it's very, very transparent. There it is on the paper. And I've made it quite watery now so that I can really get in and play with a couple more of shadows. So it looks like I'm sort of doing a lot of nothing. I'm painting things on, and then I'm pressing to remove. So I'm painting on, pressing and removing, and I keep going in that fashion until I'm sort of satisfied with the look. A few more shadows. Now she is quite shadowy around the neck because that's where the fall of the hair shades the back of the hair that you can see. Now really, I have lost my original lady, so I don't actually have a reference photo anymore. So I'm simply relying now on the painting that I've done so far to inform what I need to do. So let's get in and have a look at the background. The colours that I've used so far, blue, green and gold, and then I've used the pink as a highlighter. So I'm going to continue with that palette. And it's a really great way to paint. It means that all of my colours, in whatever combination I make them, they're all going to look right. I haven't got a colour that's standing out or making a statement, or not yet anyway. So there I'm using the pink and the gold. Just going around, and a little bit of dark. So there's that thin, watery black. If you've got a really good black, you would just use a little bit more water. And all I want is a little darkness blended in with those pinks and golds. I'm not after a particular colour. I just want to use the colours that I've already been playing with so that it all fits in, it all looks right for the painting. And it's also a great way, if you've got paints out onto your palette, it's just a great way of using up your colours, making sure that you're, just using what you've got. So, another blend with white. So remember, the dark is closest to her face, and then she's almost got a bit of a halo going on around her hair. And so I'm going back with the gold. And I'm just sort of blending that in. Oh, and there's the dark again. So the dark I've made around the edge of the painting. And because I'm putting colours on while they're still wet, I get an easy way of blending. And now I want to outline the actual shape of her hair. At this stage, I'm trying to work out where her hairline should be. So that little area in front of the face, that's a nice easy one. Got a bit more work to do on top of the head. Can you see that it's a bit misshapen? So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go back in and see if I can do a little bit more definition and grab some more highlights in the face itself. So starting off, I'm going to have a little bit of a play with the shape of her head. Now I'm using the side of the pencil to give me a bit of really quick shadow, just so I can see. And that looks a lot better, a lot more balanced. A few more hairlines there. And if you go crazy and overdo it, fine, just come back with paint. So, some highlights in the hair. Because this pen is so light and it sort of cuts in and out, can you see that? Now I'm not trying to do that, it's having a hard time working on the paint that it's already there, and I love that. So it's making her hair look really interesting. I'm not really happy with that ear, and I might have to fix that. But let's just see what we can manage with the eyes and with the lips. Trying to get a little bit more into softness into that jaw. And back into the background. So I've outlined her hair. So I'm fairly comfortable. And let's start to play with that balance between the contrasts once again. So lights near the darks and darks near the lights. So my watery black, I've got the light around the edge of the hair, and now I want to contrast that with the dark in the background. So I'm trying to make a sort of a line, however hazy, between the outline of her hair and the background. Using wet on wet. That paint's still a little bit wet, so I can play with it a bit more, and then coming in with a bit more definition with the pencil. You could use pen, but you would have to make sure that the paint is absolutely dry or you will kill your pen. You could use crayons. You could use chalk, anything you've got to hand really. That good old pencil, that'll do it for me today. Okay, so a last splash of colour, and you can see there's dots there. So we've been using a very subtle palette, and now I'm going to put some pink. So I've got a little bit of water in the top of a jar, hand over the face, and that brush is full of water, and so it's very, very liquidy, and then I'm just tapping with my finger. And there she is. So that's my video setup. I've got her in a box and I've been painting sideways. And maybe you could have a go too. Just see what you can do. It's all good fun. And thanks for watching.